Oh, wonderful. Hey, Malev, how you doing, bud?
Hey Sean, I'm hanging. Uh,
Good.
I'm doing pretty good though. Otherwise, it's Monday, so it's kind of like what's my brain doing, sort of type vibe. Like so much to do, but it's too much to think about. So then you just end up looking at YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
well,
know.
and Monday there's so much good YouTube to catch up on.
Yeah, that's true. Because it didn't.
My Mondays consist of checking emails that came in over the weekend and shipping orders that came in over the weekend. So usually before noon, that's all I'm doing is shipping orders in the garage.
That's nice though. To have a little bit of kind of a thing. I mean, that's kind of your normal morning routine. But on
Yeah,
Mondays, it's just like the big start to the week, kind of.
and it's when I put on YouTube while I do it.
True.
Yeah. So I saw Goobertown Hobbies painting up his terrain to
Oh
use
yeah,
Relicblade.
that stuff looks really cool. I remember when that Kickstarter came out. I remember thinking like, yo, that terrain would be really nice because it has that like sort of Southern American like interpreted style of the ruins and architecture and stuff and just the motifs, and it's kind of like an interesting looking lost temple feel, and I'm like, ooh, that's kind of like a Relic Blade thing, a lost temple.
Yeah, I think it'll be really good for Relicblade, and especially like I think platforms of terrain are really good because they don't create dead space on the table. Like you can go on top of it, you can be hidden behind it, whereas some like traditional terrain elements can end up just being unusable space. And so since Relicblade's on a 2x2, um, making sure guys can stand on everything, I think is
Yeah,
the way to
and
go.
his table looked super playable, which was cool, and in ways kind of mirrored a little bit of the Sundered Empire kind of kit vibes to me. Little bigger blocks and supporting things like that. And
Yeah, it was rad, and also his Relic Blade minis look so good on it because they're really brightly colored, and so on the terrain, everything it looked very Relic Bladey, very cool. I
yeah,
was excited to see it.
shout out to Goobertown Hobbies.
Yeah, man. So
So
let's see. Today it's episode 2 of
we're
Relic
doing
Buds,
episode 2. Yeah,
which is pretty exciting.
yeah.
We're,
Thanks
we're still
everybody again.
buds even
We're
after
after
a
2
couple of
episodes.
weeks.
Yeah, we're still Relic Buds.
Yeah, and pretty soon you're going to be coming out to California
Yeah,
for KublaCon.
yeah, that's gonna be pretty cool. I'm
Yeah,
excited about
KublaCon
that.
is it's a gaming convention. Miniature games aren't like the main thing that happens there, but they do have miniature gaming events. There's lots of board games and everything, and actually it's a really cool show in the Bay Area. So if any of you guys are Bay Area folks, you should definitely check out KublaCon. You'll be able to come out to a Relic Blade event or a Sludge event, hang out with me and Malev.
Yeah,
But I'm excited to have you come out to California again.
Yep,
We'll
and
feed you some
we have feed me some beats. You said
Yeah, man.
cool. I'm down
Because
for
you,
it.
you claimed, you admitted to me, is probably private, that you'd never eaten beets.
Yeah, I don't think. And then the first time I had a radish, well, I probably had radishes before, but it's it's like a conscious thing. Like, oh, I'm gonna ingest a radish. That also was the first time I had one of those at your house. And it was kind of good. It was kind of just like this like spicy dirt water ball.
Yeah.
Those.
Why is it spicy?
Yeah. And the KublaCon is interesting because the first time that we did KublaCon, I was totally caught up in the fact that people didn't know about, like, it's not that they didn't know about it, but when I'd be telling the Relic Blade pitch, and suddenly it came down to There was just a moment where they'd realize and they'd go, "Oh, oh, did you paint these? Did you build it? Did you build these and paint these? Oh yeah." And they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not interested in, or just
like that they didn't. Yeah, it's funny.
And I
not
was like,
knowing about miniatures at all. And like sometimes you gotta back up because a lot of board gamers or people who are only do D&D, because that's the biggest thing. I think D&D and board games are the biggest things at that show. But it's all tabletop stuff, right?
yeah.
But it's funny because we are all like, we're there for the toy soldiers.
The last time that we did it, what was that? 18 or 17?
Well, oh, when you were you there last time? I don't think you were there last time. I had to do it back in 2019.
Oh, okay, yeah. I wasn't. So yeah, I'm thinking it must have been 2018 or 2017 because I know we did LVO in 2017, and that was the first time we met.
Yeah, I think, and then you came out for.
And then it was that year.
Yeah,
it was that
I
year
think
later.
so.
I think so too. And so yeah, that would have been
2017
in that case.
Nick was there, and I accidentally spent $100 on Pokeballs.
Oh my gosh! I just remember. I've never heard someone say the word "shoot" with such like dire. Like, there
that was
such
terrible. I had just gotten a new iPhone,
oh shoot! I was like, what happened? What happened? You jumped up on the bed, bro. You jumped up on the bed. Oh, I just spent $100 on Pokemon.
It was so bad. I had gotten a new phone, and I swiped open the Pokemon Go app. And then I tried to close it, and it opened up the shop. And then I tried to close the app, but the button I would close the app with on my previous iPhone was to confirm a purchase on the new iPhone.
Oh my god,
it was crazy.
Yeah, bro. Oh man.
Like I still haven't played. Like I was really enjoying Pokemon Go when that happened, and then like I completely stopped. With $100 worth of Pokeballs, I can't bring myself to play.
It was just too devastating. It was crazy. Yeah, we went from like 0 to 100 mad quick, and I don't even remember what we were talking about.
Everyone was like asleep. We were like, or falling asleep, just looking at our phones, making sure everything was dealt with.
Yeah.
Open Pokemon Go, $99.99 on Pokeballs.
That's crazy. And what's wild about mobile game design is just something special, because I think I got into a little bit of the Pokemon Go when it was happening, and I remember going to like a local kind of like park that was sort of around here, and it was like it must have been nearly just after midnight, like 12:30, approaching 1 in the morning, and the amount of people that were out.
Pokemon Go
numbered
of
like
Pokemon
400. It was crazy.
It was a time where we'll remember when there was like hope for humanity. We were like, oh my gosh, like we can talk to our neighbors. You can go outside. Everyone's
you
walking,
see people and you just like,
like it's not weird to talk to people, and like everyone's friendly, and we're out late at night catching Pokemon. And yeah, man,
it was super interesting.
Life got dark after that. Like that was the golden age. Those are the good old days. Pokemon Go launched. There's hope for the future. Hamilton is unironically cool, and now it's like everything is just terrible.
Now I don't even know. I have to do more to really kind of continue and think about the things that are in my head, because if I stop to consider everything that's going on, it's like, before long, there's hours have gone by, I don't know what's going on, and I've just been thinking about things that putting me off the path, so to speak.
Talking about, we're going to be going to a convention, and at that convention we're theoretically going to be showing Relic Blades to people who haven't heard of Relicblade. And we're definitely going to be running demos. We're going to be playing at Relicblade events. So we talked about like maybe it'd be a fun topic to talk about like how we would set up to play a game of Relicblade. Yeah, like setting up, what characters you'd choose, what scenario, sort of like what would make a good introduction, but also how we play. Because one thing that Relicblade has going for it is that there's like lots of game modes. But also I think you could come into it and not really know how you should necessarily play first.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And cuz like I got a private message from a guy named Brian, and he was reading the Relicblade rulebook, and he's like, "It's really cool, but I'm trying to wrap my head around the campaign." And I was like, "Oh yeah, well, I mean, I didn't say this, but I just think like, oh well, yeah, I don't even think of the campaign as something you do right away. Like it's like if you want to link the games, if you want to explore the world, like I made all that, but like the way to play Relicblade, it to me is with teams. But then I think about the rule book. The Secret Sandbox has the scenarios in the campaign section, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, of course the campaign would seem like the main way you'd play.
One thing that what you said made me think about is that while I agree that campaign isn't it, I mean, it shouldn't be the first thing that you I mean, who's to say, but theoretically it's just to learn the system, you would want to go into the campaign first with most games.
Yeah, I mean, if you were going to start playing Frostgrave, you build your wizard, you choose your schools of magic, and then you hire your dudes, and then because you spent gold on hiring dudes, you are going to be playing a campaign.
Yeah.
That warband is going to go and do stuff, and same with Mordheim, you like created your warband.
Yeah, right from the beginning.
And like the post game's such a major part of it that of course that's going to be what you're doing.
Yeah. But
whereas I feel like
I think that's what's happening is that so many other skirmish games, if you play a lot of skirmish games and then you come to Relicblade, it's that rules lineage kind of thing that we were talking about in episode 0, where you're going to come with these like you're going to carry these notions from these other games, and like, yeah, playing the campaign, like, if a skirmish game comes out and they're like, yeah, it features no campaign mode, I think people will be like, what? Huh? Why? Well, even though I say that, I don't know if games like Malifaux have a campaign mode. I mean, I'm assuming they do, but because it just seems like such a staple, you gotta have a campaign mode.
I don't know. Yeah, and I think maybe it's because it's fantasy. So if you were gonna boot up and start playing Frostgrave, you would create your wizard and you'd choose your magic schools, and you'd spend your gold points on your apprentice and your captain and your hirelings and whatever. And because of that game format, you are already playing a campaign.
Yeah, just
because
the way you're building out.
You launched into the world with coins and started your adventure. And like it's the same with Mordheim. And so I think coming at Relicblade from that perspective, you would think you just start a campaign. But what makes Relicblade really, I think, significantly different on a design level is that the campaigns are rules-wise designed to be, 4 or 6 or 8 games long, rather than indefinite until everyone is crippled sort of adventure.
Yeah.
And I tried to, write that in, like, of the campaigns that exist, the Carthor's Doom campaign is only 3 missions.
Only 3, and then the other one's 5.
The Path of Desecration is 5. The Storms of Crawl campaign is only 3 missions, and even though they're variable and you can play it up to 6. And then same with the solo supplement that we're working on now, Catacombs of Corral, is 6 possible rooms or chambers you have to try and get through.
Yeah, but
6 possible scenarios, but you go through it variable, and then there's variable, your route through that dungeon doesn't necessarily go through all 6 chambers.
Yeah,
because I mean, part of it is that it's too dangerous, and that was a design choice early on in Relicblade, was that they wouldn't really be named characters because they're gonna die. Like part of the story to me was that, you know, there are these heroes that have gone so far and, you know, traveled through who knows what dangers, and then like slip and fall into lava, and that was their whole story, you know, kind of inglorious, and so
you could
some
feel
of
that
is
from the
carried
original
through
rules
into this
manual too.
Yeah, this era of Relicblade, some of it's carried through that way, but yeah, it's interesting to think about, like how a new player will approach it. And I think with Storms of Crawl, it's designed for people to, you know, have their warband, be introduced to the story, and then to play through those 3 missions. And that is, to me, a Relicblade campaign is, you know, 3 or 5, like a weekend worth of playing. And I feel really good about that. Whereas with Frostgrave, you could play a Frostgrave campaign and have your wizard get stronger and stronger and stronger until you've got like this awesome wizard castle and a duplicate body down in the dungeon in case you die, and you know, constructs and
for like
all
just
that
playing
stuff,
time, you know, many months, like just thinking about the way that Necromunda is designed. Like they have the campaign rules and the rules for the arbitrator, and like, you know, these great rules to how to run a campaign essentially. And there's a point in the campaign where it's like you have the first kind of like phase of action where all these things are going on, and then you have like a downtime, and it says like the downtime is like, it's like 2 or 3 weeks, you know, and then so it's like go play other games, you know. Then it's just interesting to think, like, right in the intention of the design for that game's campaign, that they want you to be playing this for, you know, a whole year, essentially several months, you know, many that wouldn't be unreasonable.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with like Relicblade being really designed with like a more intimate play experience in mind, where you're not necessarily going and meeting up with like a big group of people at a game store, or at,
like a,
you know,
like
at
a club.
Club.
Yeah.
But rather it's more about like having a game day planned with your friends, and so you run through those adventures through that day or 2 days that you're together. And I mean,
it's an interesting
point
because
it's not really explicit in the rules that that's what I had in mind, you know, but it's different enough that it's worth mentioning or thinking about, because that's not how you play Mordheim, really.
Yeah, and like what I was just sort of reminded of is that where these games are designed, like that's the real big thing about it, is like, of course, Necromunda and Mordheim, and like even games like 40K and like their Crusade rules, or even some of the game design in of itself, is sort of reflective of the fact that geographically, gamers over on the other side, that's what they have. They have a lot, like clubs is kind of the thing that is done over there, because and I've learned this from like over here and stuff that Ash has said, shout out to Guerrilla Miniature Games, that like space is at a premium, you know, there's not really a lot of room, so that's kind of the way that they do miniature like wargaming over on the other side of the ocean, is through clubs and stuff, where here, not to say that it's completely different, but here the norm is more playing games with your 1 or 2 buddies in your basement, you know, or
yeah, and part of it I think is that it's a much less common hobby in the US. Like
for sure.
Lots of people, most people haven't heard of Warhammer, let alone a smaller game. But yeah, I think
we've received
the idea of setting up the first Relicblade game is part of what Storms of Crawl was really about. Like explaining the factions, the setting, your your character being the seeker and having your own powers that you use and all of that. I think
yeah, there's so many things in it, you know, as like when I was thinking about putting that thing together and the kind of feel and vibes I want to evoke, a lot of it was like Christmas morning test style stuff, making the game feel, you know, it's kind of like trying to deliver via rules, and also thinking about this great piece of game design advice we've got in the past is like, tell me how to have fun. You know, that's kind of like the introduction of that first scenario is like very deliberate, where it's sort of unusual, but it's like, hey, just if you just read the thing, little rules kind of introduction, and you like play through that, theoretically you should go, oh, I get it, like, you know, I get it. And like it's meant to deliver that like as fast as possible, and the whole campaign, this feel and vibe is meant to be more like a Saturday morning cartoon snapshot adventure, you know, as opposed to something more akin to like a Lord of the Rings epic.
Yeah, or I mean, I think for a gamer coming in with a army for Warhammer or whatever, and thinking about your hobby in terms of you'll be collecting that army, developing your own imagination of what that army's doing. Each game you play could affect something. I think Relicblade theoretically should be more like a specific story, like more specific adventure of these specific adventurers running up the mountain or going through this one dungeon, and like a campaign would be like that one dungeon,
that whole
with
arc,
the one climax, you know, rather than the like in D&D terms, the like level 1 through 5 level type of adventure, or level, maybe it's more like level 5 to 10, where the stakes are high, but you don't go from being a hobo to being a god, you know. Whereas D&D, like theoretically, people go from being a penniless urchin to going and traveling to the plane of fire and punching a god in the eye, you know.
Yeah.
So Relicblade's more like everyone can die by a sword, whether you're level 20 or level 1, and so your adventure is more about like that one really exciting quest that starts at the bottom of the mountain and ends at the top of the mountain, you know, starts at the gates of the dungeon and ends when you make it and fight the boss. So.
And so like one thing I think about is the trait system. When we designed the trait system, we were super stoked on it because it was just like this cool, it was a way to have more like emergent storytelling happening and more interaction and more fleshing out with the characters in your warband and stuff, and really allowing you to kind of like get familiar with them and kit them out in unique ways and build cool combos. And I remember we received comments that the trait system was broken because it was creating characters that were too powerful, and it was sort of you know, I was asking questions like, oh, that, you know, that's interesting to hear, like, you know, what's going on, what's happening, tell me about your characters, tell me about your campaign. And I think they revealed that they were in like game 28 or something of the campaign, and their characters had like amassed like just insane amounts of valor, and that they just had so many traits that I was just like, oh, well, I mean, yeah, like if you play, yep, like that's how that's how you're gonna break the trait system, is because it's not necessarily designed for that kind of thing, you know. And that's, I guess that's really on us when in terms about like what sort of expectations do you put forth for a campaign, and what's the framework and that kind of stuff, the limitations that you should put on your adventure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, like, for those of us that played Mordheim, you get like a couple games in against the right warband, and they take a couple upgrades with these shooting skills, and suddenly the game like explodes. At least that was my experience.
Just like tilted. And I've had random people ask me, is Relicblade like that? Because I've played Mordheim and range was so powerful, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, funny you should say that, because Sean had that exact experience, and I think he designed that into Relicblade to where it doesn't, you know.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the trait system's not necessarily 100% perfect, but the idea was for people to be playing like 6 games. Mm-hmm. Or you know, I'd be stoked if I had time to play 12 games.
Yeah, and that's the one that I've played with my buddies.
24 or 30 games.
Yeah,
I can see things blowing out, but I mean, I'm surprised those characters survived that long. Especially if they're getting valor, that means they're killing each other.
Yeah,
it's funny.
It's an interesting little trade off, and yeah, with Relicblade campaigns, there is because right now Relicblade campaign space is kind of like I guess for lack of a better term, just like a sandbox. You know, there's a lot of, with each environment that you've got. Right now, there's 6 environments off the top of my head that actually are fully fleshed with the charts. You have Scoured Plains, Brackish Badlands, Cyclopean, Fey Forest, Arid, and Dark Dungeons. Mm-hmm. Those are your 6, and within those, like,
for what I wanted with those was that they would have those the charts that you roll on, but also to inspire people to have campaigns run in those settings.
Exactly.
And then be able to take those elements and add them to scenarios to kind of customize it. But
like that's the kind of sandbox toolkit that I'm talking about. Is like, if you look at the charts that are in each of the environments, you just kind of pointed out, you have things that you can add to existing scenarios, things that you can create entire scenarios, you know, out of. And if you're setting a campaign in the Arid Badlands, you know, picking and choosing which sort of things are going to be happening each time, and also picking and choosing of your relic collection, like which relics may like exist in that region, and also like why, you know. So just spitballing, I'm thinking there's the mythic monster scenario, right, that has the monster. It's an Uncharted scenario, and it's a monster, and it has a relic in its hand, and then he's got like the 2 little minions. I'm thinking if you could do 2 things almost, where your first scenario of your campaign that is about that relic, you do the mythic monster quest, add some things to it, and the monster doesn't have the relic yet, but is like trying to acquire it. And then at the end of the campaign, say you play like only 3 games or something, you do the mythic monster scenario again, but now he has the relic, you know. And you can even split it off into like a tree campaign, to where if the mythic monster is alive during the first scenario, then he's rewarded with the relic and will have it in the last show off. But if you take him down in the first scenario, then you get the relic, and then in the last one you're like trying to destroy him for good or something, you know. And there's just like lots of these little tiny little threads that you can.
Because like the environment should have hints in them about stories that exist, you know, and how that could be expanded for how you'll play. Mm-hmm. But again, coming back to like tell me how to have fun, I feel like I should have, you know, it would be good for me to have campaigns written for people to play through more content. But yeah, it's a lot to keep up with. But wrapping back around to the idea of how should someone start Relicblade, I think we both agree that like one of the best scenarios for exploring or starting to wrap your head around Relicblade is the Waystones, ancient Waystones.
Good old ancient Waystones.
Yeah, because that one is like it's very active as a scenario, but it you still have to fight, and it's got a good spread of action. I would love to write more scenarios that are more like that, more balanced of scenario and adventure, and not so narrative that you wouldn't replay it.
Yeah.
But I also think like players have the tools at hand to create those scenarios, like taking Waystones and slipping some of the environmental stuff into it if they want more dynamic narrative.
Like the center one has a monster guarding it, and the center one it has the Waystone as its ward, and it's just like defending it, you know. So in order to get those points, you got to go and fight the monster.
Yeah, so I think choosing warbands to 100 points, setting up and playing. Another thing I would definitely do for pickup games is create a treasure deck of like basic upgrades that when people grab those tokens, they get to pick up and equip those upgrades.
Yeah,
right
so
away.
I'm glad that you said that.
I think rules is written, you're supposed to like discover what the treasure was after the game and then give it to a guy, and then you have it for the next adventure.
It's a sort of
but
a
if
campaign.
It's a pickup game, you should be picking up a magic sword or picking up maybe magic sword's too strong, but like you should be picking up a health potion and have it as an option, right?
And that's a funny point, because one of the things that I have here in my hand, and I've got it on my little camera here, is in the new Relicblade token set that you designed, you made tokens for several of the basic upgrades.
Yeah, like the 1 point upgrades that are really ubiquitous and useful.
Yeah, and I played a game this last week, and it was one of the Uncharted scenarios, and the Uncharted scenarios set up a lot of tokens, and several of them will turn into treasure tokens. And I thought how cool it, instead of, because again, in the same way, they're sort of written from the campaign perspective, that if you have that treasure token, you know, that's more stuff for you to have during your campaign, you know. But in a one-off game, I found shuffling up these little tokens and then like blind placing one down on the top of the treasure tokens that were converted into actual treasure tokens was super cool, because then I know that there's a health potion right there, and I can just go and grab that, and like you said, have it be like instantly useful for a pickup game, as opposed to having something almost be pointless in a pickup game, you know. So being able to instantly convert your treasure tokens in pickup games to be items that you can use, and using the new tokens that actually conveniently have those cool items on there, and then instead of, if you know what it does, at least you can just put the token.
But I was careful. Like I think those tokens, well, some of them didn't exist when I wrote the Seeker's Handbook.
They
like
didn't.
The healing herb and stuff.
No,
but I tried to make sure those rules are easy
nor
to
the
find.
Noxious Bomb, nor the Corrosive Vial.
So the hope is that you'd be able to take those tokens and just shuffle them, and place them, and they'd be that. I mean, like I think about
that is what we're doing with the solo.
like online multiplayer games of like Halo. I don't know. I guess I don't know. That was the main FPS I like played a ton of.
Yeah, or even thinking about like an old fantasy game like Golden Axe or something. You know, they dropped
But
items.
there are like power ups.
Yeah, like little potions or the meat, the leg of meat, the leg meat.
Yeah. So being able to run around and get an overshield and a rocket launcher like makes sense to me for especially for pickup games. Have like a cool arena for your guys to be running around in.
And while we're on the topic of how to modify your pickup games to be more exciting, one of the things that I do all the time to make the game more interesting and also to help communicate and sell the theme more is I want to try. There's two things, and I want to try the second one because I thought of that one only today, but I'm actually kind of stoked on it. But the first one is simply take the Seeker action reference card, put it in a nice little sleeve, and tell your new player what they are. In Relicblade, you're not playing this little knight dude. Like you're playing like you, and you're the Seeker, and you get to do cool powers to affect the fate of these guys as they run around. And you can do that by re-rolling a die or hitting, giving them more armor or quickening them. And in this way, in normal Relicblade rules, characters can only perform an action once per activation. You take the same kind of idea and you just apply it to a bigger scale, and the Seekers can perform one of those Seeker actions just once per game. And then it gives you. I do that too. Yeah. It gives you like I think it's 6 extra actions that can totally, really it gives it a feel like you're actually trying to like doing a glance at the opportune time or making that decision between should I glance this guy right now or do this and stuff. It really gives you that feel of
because in Solo
that power in there.
We gave each player their fate weaving abilities once per campaign.
Yeah.
So you can use each one time per campaign. And it's funny because like you really gotta like.
They can become incredibly clutch.
Use it, yeah.
And just like doing that in pickup games, it's once you sort of have that be your normal kind of method of pickup play. You have your normal points, and then you start introducing the Seeker actions. That really becomes an interesting way to play just regular pickup games or introducing
and that
new
way
player
you can
to.
Weave in more of the relics that have Seeker actions.
Oh my gosh, we're mind linked right now.
Yeah,
because that's what I thought of today. I thought of why, because I was watching Ash's last Relicblade battle report that he did
with Mike.
With Mike, yeah. And I noticed that Ash shuffled in those relic cards into his main relic deck, and then when they pulled the Lady's Favor. Yeah. I was sitting there watching and I was like, "Doy, those aren't the relic card. Those aren't the right relic cards, Ash. You only get those in a campaign. Blah blah blah." And then life goes on. Blah blah blah. Fast forward to today this morning.
Well,
it hits me.
That game, Mike used it. Though.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It hits me this morning, and I go, "Wait, on top of the Seeker actions, wouldn't it be great if I shuffled those cards as well and dealt one in random to each player so that you kind of like get a style of Seeker."
That's a cool idea.
And then so not only do you get your 6 Seeker actions, but you also have the ability to heal. And you can heal once per game.
Ooh, I should write a note because trying to figure out like the product design for the Catacombs of Corral.
Yeah,
definitely going to include a bunch of monsters and a book, right? But like Relicblade cards, like I'm doing all this cool art. It'd be great to make the cards, right? I already designed them as cards for print in the book, so I might as well print the cards. But thinking about that, it would be cool to make a set of like Seeker powers
like
that
good and bad.
that like theme your Seeker.
Yeah.
And like that's the idea, is that they would be like a fate weave ability that is connected to your faction. Maybe
so
you could be like,
I don't remember,
what does a justice seeker have as their
I don't remember if you
justice ability.
If you remember, Sean, but in quote unquote Big Solo, I have the seeker skill chart.
Oh yeah, that's true. I remember
and that's exactly what that kind of thing is. We'll have to kind of look at that with a little bit more of an idea, because the idea was that in Solo, when you win the missions in Relicblade, you get influence, and you spend influence on followers and specialist followers. But if the idea that we've kind of been talking about for campaigns is a more like, tell me how to have fun, and we're talking about like episodic and short snapshots and story centric and all this stuff, I was thinking, well, what are you going to spend your influence on? Because you're not going back to base. So I was thinking, from the design perspective, rather than having players spend influence on like a specialist follower, at some point in the campaign they'll just run across specialist followers and they can buy from them. But what they'll be spending the influence on is to increase their seeker powers. And that's when I created that little chart, the skill chart, where you go down and you unlock new seeker powers, and there's like based on your decisions, because it's branching, it sort of tells you what kind of seeker style you have, whether you're more like about augmenting and making power come out of your characters, or about like affecting what can happen to them and making them faster. There's all these little different things. But a card pack that was like, say 12 cards, 6 and 6, and they were like that, one had the adversary advocate card back and had cool kind of like your path of advocate and path of adversary, like tattered banners and the candles thing that was on the card, and it was like, you are this and you have this,
because
like,
then
special.
you could fit with that banner layout, if that was like the card design, that would give me a lot more space to add like flavor text.
Yeah, and that'd be really cool. And one of the things in the Descent campaign, playing the Descent 2nd edition, that's really fun is that you've got the Overlord versus the heroes, and the heroes get like a traditional class deck to spend experience on and get new abilities, but the Overlord gets to spend experience on these things called Overlord cards, and there's many different Overlord classes, and you can choose to spend experience and grab any of these cards, or you can kind of go down one of these decks and like kind of specialize in this particular style of deviousness. But I love the feeling of that, because with the cards and making the decision and reading the flavor text on the cards, and just the playing the game, and that sort of the position of the player being the Overlord, and like for example, one of the cards that you can have in the Overlord deck makes your surge abilities just do an extra 3 damage. So you can sit there, dice is rolled, defense is rolled, and my hero players are like, ooh, okay, so that is going to do 2 damage to me. I'll have 2 health left if I block this. And then they're like, okay, I guess I'll take 2 damage. And I'm like, you're going to take 2 damage? You're not going to reroll that? Because I'm going to play Surge, and suddenly that's 5 damage, And then they're like, oh, it's just, it has this element to it that kind of interacts with the game in a cool way, where I feel like the Overlord, So it would be interesting to try with the kind of handing out the Seeker campaign cards, like the Renegade's Curse or the Lady's Favor, if that kind of also gave you a little bit of more of a feel of this, like there's a little bit of a character that you're getting to play as.
Yeah, it's tough. There's so many ideas and so little time. I'd love to be able to just like dive in and make. I mean, I wish. It's got to be possible to just do essentially one. I can do it. I could write a short campaign with the framework that already exists I just like I always get swept away and want to make like, oh well, we need new monsters. Oh, we need new characters. We need
Yeah, no doubt.
and then
no
suddenly
doubt.
it's too
and
big.
I
to
mean, I've
make.
told you that. Yeah, there's been that the stuff that interests me and the stuff that I want to design with Relicblade, and a lot of the stuff that I have designed has been from the always about not adding stuff for you to make.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
sort of like that we have all this cool stuff already. You know, that we could use. Like just a quick little side tangent example. What I've been thinking about is I'm trying to, and I asked you this earlier if there was any lore connected with some of the relics, because I'm feeling like a lot of the stuff that I design, or even when I play Relicblade, because when we talk about the scenarios that we enjoy playing, we like playing Waystones is a great introductory one, because strangely enough, every time I've taught people Relicblade with the Relicblade scenario with the relic in the middle, while it gives them that feel and it feels connected to the game's theme, it also kind of undersells the game's capability, where each time I've done that, people have been like, yeah, that's really cool. Does it always just kind of end up like just a big clash in the middle?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, actually, very much not actually that. You know, that's actually like unique to this scenario, you know? And then I realized like this doesn't have those moments of when the scenario is too straightforward to where for a one-off game it doesn't really give you that mechanical depth, like decision making. It's just like I hit the guy, you know, I'm gonna go attack the guy, kind of pretty much. Whereas like Waystones gives you that do I have to disengage from you, and then I have to light the brazier, but do I focus on the disengaged, or do I focus on the brazier? And then like, this is the last point, so you know, if I literally don't do this right now, like this, he could win the game because he could do this. And there's just like all these different little elements to Waystones that shows off the Relicblade you know, engine a little bit better. And that being the case, one of the things I'm trying to think about what I was saying before, because we're talking about secret ideas and relic cards and designing stuff without adding too many things. That's right. Is that I've kind of gotten away from relics. In Relicblade, I've gotten away from relics, you know, so I've been looking at the relics of the Volk deck, and I'm like, man, that is 10 cards. That's 10 potential adventures, you know.
Yeah, because the relics should be like a relic.
They're the MacGuffin.
Campaign.
Yeah, you know, that's the MacGuffin. So I've been looking at them and saying, if this is the MacGuffin for a story hook, what is that story? And how can I, you know, come up with the framework for an adventure that would be really cool Relicblade thing? And there's so many sort of examples of that.
I think it's really, I think we've like landed on a really important step for me in my imagination of what Relicblade could use, because that Relics of the Volk card pack, like, I mean, the intention is that those are the MacGuffins. Each one is a MacGuffin or a core magic item that leads you on an actual adventure.
Yeah.
And so that's a really, really simple foundation for me to look at and be like, oh, look, I can make a campaign packet that's just a scenario packet.
Yeah.
That is a setup for each of those cards.
Exactly.
You know, a story hook about that adventure, and a scenario about that features that relic, and then also features elements that relate to that relic, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, you know, you weave in there 2 or 3, well, let's say 5 like generic episodes, Monster of the Week episodes that like you would put into that they'd be adventures that you put in leading up to or or connected to connect those like main story missions. Like,
Yeah.
you know, so you'd play like
for sure. I got you.
Pack Escort or like a bandit raid episode, but that then leads to actually being in the swamp where you uncover the
Yeah, and it kind of like
relic.
one thing that we've talked about in the past, and I've tried to like remind you and try to remind myself when I'm like designing stuff for Relicblade, is that while of course, you know, we always are looking for new people and trying to get new people into Relicblade, and that there is a lot of new people getting into Relicblade all the time, the core Relicblade audience is kind of like me, and by that I mean they've backed the Kickstarters at crazy levels and they have everything. And so that being the case, when I give myself permission to design and say everyone has everything, that makes it exciting, because then, like you say, there isn't something that stops you from thinking as the designer or the creator that they should use an element from the Vogelands and then also mix it in, you know, like for example, do a temple defense scenario with the Brackish Badlands like chart with an element of the Brackish Badlands like in it that leads to, you know, some other thing that's back in the Seeker's Handbook, or like a dark dungeon or something, like a sunken Brackish Badland you know, tower that once you got there it leads into the dark dungeon kind of stuff, and you're kind of going all over the place.
Or even like you know, having the adventure take place near a bandit camp and being able to use the Lone Guard figures to represent the bandits, these like bad Lone Guard.
Yeah,
you know,
bad Lone Guard's actually really a cool idea for sure. And
corrupted by the magic of the Crown of Madness, right? Exactly,
you know, and yeah, we're on such a similar page without having talked about it. I'm excited. Like I told you before,
I know. I
said my Relicblade blood cells have been moving like crazy lately, and it's just so interesting that like that you're saying things that I'm thinking I'm gonna say when you stop talking, and I'm like, wait, but that's exactly what I just wanted to say. You know, there's so many cool ideas about what can happen, you know, with Relicblade, and there's such a huge foundation of those things, you know, already. And one thing I think we should maybe we could do before we call this episode a close, maybe to give back to the people, is like let's go over what our preferences would be if we were to set up a Relicblade campaign. Sean, what would be
campaign, or like
a Relicblade campaign? Yeah, like so. If you were gonna set up a Relicblade campaign, like right now, you know, we were gonna hang out this weekend, and I was like, dude, like, you know, I want to be there for a couple of days. Like, just hit me up with the campaign. Like, what sort of things?
Dude, I mean, I'd go nuts. Like, if I'd treat it more like D&D, where I have a sense of what a Relicblade campaign is supposed to be like, and I would, you know, choose a story, think about like what warbands you want to use, what warbands I want to use, what types of wild monsters should be involved, what relics, like, you know, have a pretty strictly limited relic deck, if a deck, you know, or just assign relics to a scenario. I'd be stoked about trying to get characters on the table that I haven't played with lately. You know?
Wow. Word.
Or like, you know, I recently painted a Darkness warband, but then I also have this like benefit of being the creator, where there are I could be like writing new characters, but I think anyone else could do that too.
For sure.
You just have to
give yourself
remove
permission.
Remove some of the expectation of like competitive balance, because when I do it, I play test it and I balance it as we go, and then like before something gets published, it's all play tested thoroughly. Whereas if I was just setting up for you and I to play, I probably wouldn't weave in new characters necessarily. but I
Yeah.
might mess around with new scenarios.
Mhm.
But yeah, man, like so often when you and I specifically, as Sean and Malev get together, we really are playtesting all new campaigns, right?
Yep. So far,
But I
that's
think
what it's been. Yeah.
if I had, yeah, if you were gonna come over and we were gonna play, I would set up and probably just be doing edits on existing things, you know, like doing Pack Yak Escort, but adding an edit from a environment that I wanted to play with, or you know, whatever new terrain set I made might like
Exactly.
dig in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot we could do. But heck, if I had a friend that was totally new to Relicblade that was coming over, yeah, it'd be more straightforward, where I'd help design a warband so they wouldn't be overwhelmed. I'd explain like what characters do, you know, oh, this guy's more of your tank, have this guy hang back because he'll be more support or whatever. And then like try and really get into the adventure of the game rather than focusing on like face smashing head-to-head battle, but really try to bring out the fact that the game is very much about the unfolding narrative, very much about the adventure, and a scenario that's leading on the story toward ultimately probably a relic and all the characters dying.
Yeah, or in some crazy destruction.
Yeah, but how about you? Imagine I've got my freshly painted Lone Guard. I'm gonna come over to the Castle de Shinobi.
If you've got the freshly painted Lone Guard, so what I'm thinking is, if I'm doing a campaign, I'm gonna be thinking about a couple of things in the Relicblade framework, where now we have the kind of the bases thing, right? So those are going to be like how we get our initial people, and we'll have them kind of built up. And once we've got our starting warband, it's going to be this. For me, I like to think about stuff in these like weird little frameworks where it's like we'll do a random, an uncharted scenario first, but probably not. Maybe re-roll the battlefield relic one. You know, maybe choose of the scenarios which one to do. Start with an uncharted scenario, and then based on that uncharted scenario and the outcome, like think about what's like kind of makes the most sense. You know, like which outcome from this scenario of all of the existing ones, like which one would we do first? But so
like
for
you could
example,
set up an overarching like not necessarily theme, but like mood for the scenario or for the campaign, and then under this setting, like have an overarching thing, but then be able to, as all the players work together to figure out like where things go and happen next.
Yeah, like for example, exactly. Because now I'm thinking, if you were coming up with the Lone Guard, right, then it would be really cool to play the first scenario that comes to my mind thinking about just that is like, if you want to play Lone Guard, I want to play adversary and be something of like in this attacking wild force. So I might play darkness or pigs, but the first scenario that we're going to play is going to be fortress defense, and the adversary player is going to be the attacker, and the Lone Guard player is going to be sort of the story will be like while they've been camped out doing like recon, you know, in this ancient temple, like suddenly an ambush. If depending on who wins, we might do like a different scenario, you know, like for example, if the attackers won in that one, and I'm thinking, okay, if the attackers won and sort of routed those guys and they weren't really able to get back to you know, get back into really warn anybody, we might move into something like a Pack Yak escort, as now the Lone Guard guys are going to try to be getting away with the Pack Yaks and like the stuff that they, you know, traveled to that site with. Or if the Lone Guard people won, then the next one we play would be like the Lone Guard Watchtower, where it's the signal fire one where they're going to launch a signal thing. And then again, just thinking about what scenario that we have that kind of seems like a cool next story to that, to kind of follow it up. And then on top of that, I would choose one environment, probably, maybe two, but likely probably just one. Like either it's all set in the Fey Forest and it's about this, and I might have the Fey Knight be like a reoccurring character, because those for me are like the frameworks, choosing your scenarios that you're going to be playing, and it's not going to be a lot. You know, you want to think about your original engagement, what becomes of that original engagement, what now has to happen because of this new information, and then there is almost like the epic clash at that moment. You know, it's like once we warn them of the new people to come, like for example, if the Lone Guard managed to do the signal fire, then the last scenario could be the battleground scenario from the Battle Pigs pack, as the Lone Guard are like rallied to try and just like, you know, make a counter attack force too, and then maybe the player will get an extra some odd points to spend as they're rallied a large force to answer the call. Whereas if they didn't, it would be maybe just like the relic grab scenario, where the adversary player is trying to grab this relic of power, and you've got a smaller Lone Guard force that's trying to stop them. You know, so 4 scenarios, maybe 5, maybe 6, but you really only need 4 for your like original, your inciting incident, you know, the kind of effect of that, and then to a sort of call to action, and then the finale kind of thing, you know. And then
and I always think like I always think about like, what is the big crisis that's happening? Like if darkness is attacking a Lone Guard outpost, is it because that outpost is, you know, by a tomb that has a powerful relic in it? Like, because the Lone Guard would be, you know, protecting roads, right? That
they may not
for
know
travelers and for peasants to be safe. Whereas darkness would full on be, you know, uncovering the ancient tombs of old lost kings that are full of cursed items. And so you're getting dragged into this like underground adventure where the Lone Guard were there to protect travelers, but end up being stuck in this horrible catacomb, because to protect travelers they have to stop darkness from turning everyone into skeletons. You know? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, like and you know, thinking about campaign and story arc, like beginning, middle, and end, I think it is something I would really recommend people explore, and also something I do. Like 3 games is something you can definitely play on a game day.
Yeah,
like not necessarily in like the amount of time you'd set up to play a board game, but you know, if you're going to get together and play games, you could definitely blast through 3 games and have a beginning, inciting incident, a middle where like there's like this dark adventure, and then the exciting conclusion based on what happened, where you know, characters have powered up, they've got items, they've got, you know, you've been really generous with treasures and seeker abilities, and then you clash like some really important thing that ends with like a bang.
Yeah, and I mean, in that framework too, there's so many fun things that you can do. Like for example, if you have because in the campaign you have the spending of influence on your specialist followers to get upgrades and stuff, and so I think one of an obstacle and or roadblock that people might kind of encounter is that, how can I really play, you know, like a 5-game campaign and have guys with cool upgrades and all these stuff, and the answer is like, stage it, you know, give yourself rewards, like give each player a magic weapon if they do at this point, because the battle took place in an ancient armory, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And because so like a long haul campaign where you start with like 2 guys and then they go on an adventure and then finally meet the ranger at the prancing pony, like that's a cool thing. But yeah, I really lean and have been excited about the like more card driven campaigns like in Storms of Corral.
Yeah.
Because I think that that campaign in the Seeker's Handbook really reflects my game heritage of playing Mordheim and of playing Frostgrave and thinking about things in terms of like a longer adventure, whereas I think Relicblade really shines in the direct story, and then the fact that everything's on these beautifully illustrated cards, being able to draw treasures and get stuff in having it be like a deck building experience in a way. Where you have, sure. Yeah, I think that would also be something I do. You're coming over, I'm going to be making a treasure deck, thinking about what scenarios I would want us to play based on the story, and then what tweaks I can make from the environment. So I'd be stoked.
Yeah, and it makes me think about...
I just wish we got to play more often, and so that it wasn't all just like as fast as we can play testing and getting.
Yeah, I feel it. You know,
although the discovery of play testing is magic all its own.
It really is, and sticking on that topic about like, you know, beautifully illustrated cards, like good old Runehammer, Hankering Infernal's got the Index Card RPG, and I want to get into Index Card RPG because like that whole core of that experience seems to be about that simplicity of the index card. Like you go into the room, bam, I lay down the index card and it has a treasure chest on it. Like that's what you see. There's a treasure chest, like, you know, and it's really kind of focused and quick. And thinking about Relicblade cards is the same thing, and not really thinking so much about rules framework and thinking about adventure framework. Like for example, you know, in your campaign, it happens to go past like a wretched hive like sort of den, and as you're like passing through, each player gets a chance to like meet specialists, right? And buy stuff. But the player that won the scenario last time and got there first, regardless of what faction, you know, what alignment they are, gets to hire an Iguan assassin, you know. And so, and it creates these unique moments where it's just like, imagine seeing an Iguan assassin dude like in the market next to you, and regardless, even though that's an adversary character and you might be an advocate warband, like that's what makes these kind of frameworks fun and exciting, is that you can do that if that's something that, you know, the story that you wanted to tell kind of involved that kind of thing. And you also said, wouldn't that be kind of neat if there was a possibility to create a unique warband in this campaign that could otherwise not exist, because I've the Temple of Justice they're so desperate they've hired the Iguan assassin. You know. Yeah,
or they're stuck with him. Maybe.
Yeah, something like that. You know, like there's all these interesting applications that you can do with the Relicblade toolbox. And I think with what we're doing here and stuff that, you know, I want to do more, because we'd love to make more YouTube content, more digital content, all this stuff. That's something that I'm super inspired by, is kind of just like sharing with people, you know, how to access, because it's a lot, you know, and I'm super close to it. You're the closest to it, you know, you're the inception point. So the way that we interact with it is a little bit different than maybe where other people, you know. So being able to have a place to talk about that and like tell people what's cool about this Relicblade sandbox, and go.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't really thought about what a big like frame change it is when you have someone explain like, oh, Relicblade is a 3 to 5 game campaign story, which is so different than Mordheim. Like, I'm going to try and survive in the city for as long as possible.
Yeah, and get the most kind of money. And the thing that too is that, again, going back to that idea that everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people who own Relicblade stuff have a lot of it. This concept of, you know, creating these long form games isn't as interesting, because it's about playing with all your cool toys. So it's like, do one campaign with the Temple of Justice, paint them up, really, have fun with that, get down on some games with them, and then, that set that you haven't painted, the Wilderkin set or whatever, next campaign, boom, Wilderkin, start painting them up and then throw them in, and then it's just all about interacting with all of the stuff that you already have, in interesting and unique ways to kind of do it. Well, Sean,
right,
I think that's a perfect point for us to end it there. It's been episode 2.
This is episode 2 of Relicbuds, a Metal King Studio podcast, brought to you by Metal King Studio.
Ayo. Lovely. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in this time. We'll be back next week, and we'll be talking about, we don't know yet, but more cool stuff for sure.
Yeah,
I'm already excited about it.
Metal King-y things.
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
All right, y'all.
Goodbye, everybody.
Take care. Much love and peace.
Holy moly.
Oh. So, sorry. You could hear that, but the people on the recording won't, curiously enough. But I'm sorry. I'm used to running this rig as a stream so that other people can't hear me in this way, so that's actually really funny. And what has just happened, everybody, is I had to clear my throat, so I muted my mic, but it doesn't mute the mic for Sean, so all he heard was someone just clearing
in my head.
Yes, quite loud, because I figure if I'm muted, you gotta really do it, might as well just do it. You can't,
you don't mute to like
you gotta do it. So that's hilarious.
What were we talking about? Oh, campaigns. Yeah. So
campaigns.
Yeah. I mean, Mordheim and Frostgrave, they all happen in the campaign, and theoretically, like Relicblade, also you take your adventures, you do your quests, but unlike those other games, by design, a Relicblade campaign isn't supposed to be a ton of.
I'm sorry.
What's up?
That was just hilarious. I'm gonna stop recording.